Jai Radha Madhava, if that's okay. Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana, Jaya Giri Varadari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Giri Varadari. Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Braja Janaranjana. Jaya Yamuna Thira, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Chalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Thank you, dear devotees. Thank you, everyone in the Zoom room. Thank you, all the senior devotees. I saw Adi Purush in the back, but he's not here. I really wanted to ask all of the blessings today of the senior Vaishnavas that are present on the Zoom call. Adi Purush Prabhu may be in the back, because we are talking about a very deep spiritual subject matter that I don't necessarily feel qualified to talk about, but I will do my best. How's everyone doing today? Are you awake? Are you here? Yes? Okay, good. So today we are continuing our conversation about Damodar Leela and Damodar pastime. Let me see if I can find my presentation. We are speaking about Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, verse 9. No, Canto 10, Chapter 9, verse 11 to 12. One second, let me pull it up because I'm on another. Okay, I want to save that. Chapter 10, Chapter 9. Okay, here we go. So I'll read the Sanskrit, the translation, and the purport of each one, because each one has a purport. Kritaga samtam parudantamakshini kashantamagyan masini swapanina udvikshamanam bhaya viva lekshanam hashte gritva bhishayantya vargurat. The translation. When caught by Mother Yashoda, Krishna became more and more afraid and admitted to being an offender. As she looked upon him, she saw that he was crying, his tears mixing with the black ointment around his eyes. And as he rubbed his eyes with his hands, he smeared the ointment all over his face. Mother Yashoda, catching her beautiful son by the hand, mildly began to chastise him. The purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. From these dealings between Mother Yashoda and Krishna, we can understand the exalted position of a pure devotee in loving service to the Lord. Yogis, Jnanis, Karmis, and Vedantists cannot even approach Krishna. They must remain very, very far away from him and try to enter his bodily effulgence. Although this also they are unable to do so. Great demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva always worship the Lord by meditation and by service. Even the most powerful Yamaraj fears Krishna. Therefore, as we find in the history of Ajamil, Yamaraj instructed his followers not even to approach the devotees, what to speak of capturing them. In other words, Yamaraj also fears Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Yet this Krishna became so dependent on Mother Yashoda that when she simply showed Krishna the stick in her hand, Krishna admitted to being an offender and began to cry like an ordinary child. Mother Yashoda, of course, did not want to chastise her beloved child very much, and therefore she immediately threw her stick away and simply rebuked Krishna, saying, "Now I shall bind you so that you cannot commit any further offensive activities, nor for the time being can you play with your playmates." This shows the position of a pure devotee in contrast with others like Jnanis, Yogis, and the followers of Vedic ritualistic ceremonies in regarding the transcendental nature of the absolute truth. Verse 12. Tyakva yashtim sutam bhitam vigyaya bhaka vatsala yesha kilatam bhadhum damnatad virya kovidam. Translation. Mother Yashoda was always overwhelmed by intense love for Krishna, not knowing who Krishna was or how peaceful he was. Because of maternal affection for Krishna, she never even cared to know who he was. Therefore, when she saw that her son had become excessively afraid, she threw the stick away and desired to bind him so that he would not commit any further naughty activities. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Jai. Mother Yashoda wanted to bind Krishna not in order to chastise him, but because she thought that the child was so restless that he might leave the house in fear. That would be another disturbance. Therefore, because of full affection to stop Krishna from leaving the house, she wanted to bind him with rope. Mother Yashoda wanted to impress upon Krishna that since he was merely afraid to see her stick, he should not perform such disturbing activities as breaking the container of yogurt and butter and distributing its contents to the monkeys. Mother Yashoda did not care to understand who Krishna was and how his power spreads everywhere. This is an example of pure love for Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are speaking about this Damodar pastime and this very specific 2 verses about Krishna crying to avoid getting hit by a stick. And Mother Yashoda then kind of deciding not to hit him with the stick and rather tie him so that he wouldn't run away and continue his nonsense. And I was just Jai Arjuna Prabhu, Haribol. Welcome back. So I have a lot of points on these 2 verses, and I'll try to be as organized as I can because there's a lot to talk about. But one thing that I'll start with is that as I was reading, it was just kind of so sweet, right? Like I couldn't help myself from smiling because it was so funny and it was so cute. And these pastimes are meant to elicit something in our heart. We're not supposed to be reading them as like some mythology or some, I don't know, like we have to read them with the correct understanding, right? And that's why the first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam build up to the 10th canto, because if we read them without the correct understanding, we can approach it in a incorrect way. And that's kind of the spirit of the purport here as well, right? Because Srila Prabhupada is saying that he's really helping us understand that the main point of this first verse, at least, or these 2 verses together, is that we are seeing the exalted position of a pure devotee, right? We are seeing Mother Yashoda and her relationship with Krishna. And he, in the purport, is speaking about the Gyanis and the yogis and the karmis and the Vedantists and how they will never reach this state, right? If they stay, doing what they're doing. And I was meditating on this. It was so interesting that I didn't know I was speaking on these verses until yesterday when I was preparing. And on Saturday, I saw some old friends from high school, 2 old friends from high school. And it was really interesting because I don't know how it is for all of you, but like whenever I see like old friends that aren't devotees, they kind of want to like talk about deep things going on in their life because like they know about my life and the path I've chosen. And so they like want to talk about all the things. And one particular friend like is a yoga teacher and he's like a yogi or whatever. And so he wanted to like get into it. And I try not to get into it so much with these type of people because sometimes they can have a contestive attitude and I like to avoid that. However, it actually was really sweet because he was asking a very genuine question from a perhaps limited understanding. And his genuine question was, well, why can't we chant to all the demigods? Why can't we chant to Shiva and Hanuman and Lakshmi and Durga? And like, why can't we just chant to everyone? Like, why can't we do that? Because he was coming from this yoga perspective of, the modern contemporary yoga scene in New York and big cities is like, chant to whoever you want to, just like chant whatever mantra you want. And just, it should be nice and something like this. And so maybe when I first moved into the ashram and I was having some pure devotee syndrome, I would have maybe been a little harsher and be like, no, Krishna is the only one who you should chant to, and this is nonsense and whatever. But by the mercy of my guru and the illustrious devotees here at the Bhakti Center who have such a sweet mood, I was able to respond in a way that I think was okay. And the way that I responded was simply that if I try to have a relationship with everyone, they will only be on the surface because it's impossible to have a super deep relationship with everything and everyone, right? And therefore, I was speaking from my own perspective, as Krishna Bhaktas, we have some faith, we have some love for Krishna, and we want to go deep. And so it's not necessarily that these other demigods are bad. Obviously, Shiva is one of the greatest devotees of Krishna. It's just that the ras is not there, right? We want to know about Krishna. We want to get deep about Krishna. And so one shouldn't necessarily deride, people in that position. But I think that was a simple enough understanding for my friend to really understand, like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like if I have so many different relationships, it's very hard for me to go deep in each and every one of them in the same way, right? I might have a relationship with my mother and my brothers and my partners and my, devotee friends and like whatever, and my seniors and my juniors and my peers, but they're all different relationships. My relationship with Krishna is the most important, and it's meant to go deeper than any of those relationships. So if Srila Prabhupada here is saying very clearly that karmis, yogis, jnanis, Vedantists, they're not going to be able to go that deep. It's just that simple, And so, of course, we shouldn't, at least in my opinion, I wasn't in a bashing mood to my friend, and I kept it at that. But the good thing is that he understood. He was like, yeah, that makes sense. I can't go super deep if I'm trying to do everything with everyone. And I was like, yep, that's it. And so the understanding is that it takes real relationship, right? We hear this word sambandha. And sambandha, or relationship, is one of those words that I feel like sometimes gets said a lot, but what does that really mean? Like, how do I develop a relationship with Krishna? Like, how do I nurture a relationship with Krishna? How do I do it? Does anyone have any suggestions? How should I develop my relationship with Krishna?
Through the guru?
Yes, through the Guru Ananda Bihari Prabhu, and Champak was saying chanting his names and praying to him, and yeah, telling him your heart. Yeah, that's definitely a beautiful way to get closer to Krishna. Through the Guru, yes, absolutely. Anyone else?
Bhagavatam every day.
Jai, that's the one that I was waiting for. That's the one that I was waiting for. And Champak said it at the same time. Hearing about him every day. And yes, Bhakti Devi, thank you. Bhagavatam every day is the goal. And so these stories are not, they're not stories, right? They're pastimes. They're eternal pastimes of Krishna that are extremely esoteric, extremely deep, and we should be hearing about them, and we should be hearing from sadhus. I'm not a sadhu, but you have to hear from me today. My apologies. And we should be trying to learn about them in a way that is not just, I read the story and it was nice, if that makes sense, right? We be really trying to understand what is the essence, what is going on here. And so we'll get a little bit into that here. We'll keep on going. Oh, wow, time is flying. Okay. So we must hear about the pure devotees. Mother Yashoda is a pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada gives this example that even Yamaraj is afraid of Krishna, right? And there's this almost like reverential kind of fear relationship with Krishna, but the purest devotee like Mother Yashoda, none of that is there, right? And Srila Prabhupada, or the verses are saying that actually she has no interest in knowing about Krishna's like grandeur and like who he is and God and like whatever. She just wants to have this loving pastime with him. And that's actually the highest level, which is like pretty crazy. We'll get into that in a second. So I always like to bring these things into more of a practical place, because we're here hearing about pure devotees, Mother Yashoda. And this is a very beautiful description. And we'll get back to this description and the internal meaning of it. But I want to take a little detour into more of a practical realm, because this might leave us wondering. And I think that this is actually what happens sometimes when you read about pure devotees, or when you read about, Mother Yashoda and Krishna and Balaram's pastimes and Radha. And sometimes people even, sometimes there's that mood of like, oh, we shouldn't get into super deep Leela because we're not qualified for this, or, etc. And I think that maybe the reason that happens is because when we read about these pure devotees, maybe the question that starts circling, or at least in my mind it does, it starts whirling, as always, because the self is selfish, right? Is, well, what about me? What about me? I'm not a pure devotee, right? I'm not on the level of Mother Yashoda. I'm not there. So what should I do? And how should I act? And where should I be? And where is my place? And how do I learn from this, really? And so this is really, really beautiful, because I wanted to go to, Krishna gives us a lot of different options, which is kind of really nice about Krishna. Krishna gives us a lot of different options. So there's this verse, there's actually a few verses in Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 12. I won't get into it so much. I won't read all the verses, but it's starting with verse 8, where Krishna is telling Arjuna, after he's explained Bhakti Yoga, right? He says to him, just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. Sounds good, right? Verse 9, my dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So, we hear about the ultimate advice and nectar of instruction to think of Krishna 24 hours a day and use all of the hours in our day to speak his names and hear his pastimes and do service to Krishna. But, I think that sometimes when we read something like that, it's like, whoa, we might not like to say it, but I remember when I lived in the ashram, I always felt I saw someone in the chat was like laughing that I said pure devotee syndrome, but it's a real thing, it's like a real thing. It's like you come into devotional life, you think you have to be perfect, maybe the mind kind of starts to measure your devotional prowess, and you're wearing your dhoti nice and etc. and you have your tilak on and you're just like, I'm a devotee and this is what we do and like this, and I remember Jay Jagannath would always make fun like this, and I also would realize that I would be doing that you come into the temple and you're chanting your rounds and Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and you see some devotee who lives in the ashram come in late at 7 to start chanting their rounds, and you're just like, okay, I'm not gonna say anything, but wow, and this is sometimes the mood, but it's not the correct mood. And the reason it's not the correct mood is because we have to, Srila Prabhupada was very, very intent on making this very clear. We have to know our position. We have to know where we are in our devotional life. And so I am not a pure devotee. I am not an Uttama Adhikari. Like, this is not the case. And this is being told to us in Srimad Bhagavad Gita here in this verse. And so Srila Prabhupada is giving a nice purport here, and I'll read it. He says, in this verse, 2 different processes of bhakti yoga are indicated. The first applies to one who has actually developed an attachment for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by transcendental love. And the other is for one who has not developed an attachment for the Supreme Person by transcendental love. For this second class, there are different prescribed rules and regulations one can follow to be ultimately elevated to the stage of attachment to Krishna. So one might hear this and think, but I do have attachment for Krishna, right? Like, what are you talking about, Srila Prabhupada? I have attachment. I like chanting kirtan. I like chanting my japa, like I'm here, at the Bhakti Center. I'm being spiritual. So Srila Prabhupada continues. Bhakti yoga is the purification of the senses. At the present moment in material existence, the senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. Here comes the caveat, right? It's like, I'm in sense gratification. But by the practice of bhakti yoga, these senses can become purified. And in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. And the master also is not in love. He takes service from me and pays me. So as though there is no question of love. But for spiritual life, one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. That stage of love can be achieved by the practice of devotional service performed with present senses. So Srila Prabhupada here is talking about, does anyone know what Srila Prabhupada here is talking about? The 2 paths of bhakti that he's referencing? Jai, Raganuga Bhakti and Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So he is eliciting us to practice Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti because our senses are impure and we are caught in sense gratification, and therefore we have to practice bhakti, right? The bhakti isn't just like, we're not just immediately purified, right? We're not at the level of Mother Yashoda. And this is something to remember, I think, every day, actually, because a point that I was going to make, maybe now, because I only have 10 minutes left, Krishna, is that we have to practice these principles. Sometimes we'll get a little lax. Sometimes we'll be chanting our japa inattentively, myself included. Sometimes we'll, just get resentful about our services. And we have to practice the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, the path of bhakti in sadhana as prescribed by the acharyas, every single day. Because even if we start to loosen that a little bit, like even if we just start to loosen it a tiny bit, the material energy is extremely strong. Does everyone agree? the material energy is extremely strong. So the moment you start to think, oh, whatever, like it's fine. I don't need to go to the kirtan. Or like, it's fine. I didn't finish my job today. Whatever. It's okay. I love Krishna, so it's fine. Right. And sometimes this is mentality. I love Krishna, so it's okay. Like it's whatever. And that mentality is not for us. I think that's the real point. That mentality is not for us because we are practicing Vaidhi Bhakti. We are not Mother Yashoda. And the danger, and this is, I think, what Srila Prabhupada is really trying to mention in the purport, the danger is, like he's saying, Vedantists and yogis and karmis and jnanis, they're not going to be able to approach Krishna in this way. And he even says that their goal is to merge with the Brahman effulgence and personal Brahman. And Prabhupada says in the purport, well, they're not even going to get that. So if we want to actually, progress along our bhakti, we have to be real with ourselves about where we're at. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, that was my heavy point. Point number two is let's get a little bit into the Leela because it's so sweet. So I think I definitely feel this way, but maybe some of you do, that Krishna's kind of naughtiness and trickiness and tricksterness and silliness, it's quite enamoring, isn't it? Like when you hear about these pastimes of Krishna, it's just like what's going on? It's so cute and so funny. So this is from I'll read this. This is from a book called Dhammadarastakam by His Holiness Srila Narayan Maharaj. And it's a very sweet book. It's a very sweet meditation on the Dhammadarastakam. And he goes verse by verse. And these verses in the Bhagavatam correlate directly to the second stanza. Rudantam muhunetra yugma mirajantam. Yes, it correlates exactly. So it is saying here, yes, so the Leela, Krishna is hoping that by showing Mother Yashoda how afraid he is, she will not punish him, right? So Krishna is thinking, like, if I cry and if I show her how afraid I am, then she won't hit me with the stick. So it is being said here. Now, he is hoping that by showing her how afraid he is, he can avoid being punished. So Rudantam, he cries bitterly, and Karam Bhoja Yugmena Netra Yugmam Rajantam. He rubs his eyes again and again with both his lotus-like hands. That he just keeps rubbing his eyes with both his hands is in keeping with the natural behavior of a child. This is the special characteristic of his Balya Leela, and it is one explanation of Karamboja Yugmena Netra Yugmam Mrijantam. But this phrase also indicates two alternative meanings. The first of these is that there are actual tears that instantly came to his eyes due to his fear. In order to make these tears fall from his eyes, he continuously rubs them with both his hands. The second alternative meaning is that continuous streams of tears are already flowing from his eyes, so he rubs his eyes with both his hands to wipe away the tears. Okay, so let's break this down a tiny bit. So there's two meanings here. Either Krishna has tears welling up in his eyes because he's in fear that he's going to get hit. And remember that this fear of being hit is his eternal loving pastime with Mother Yashoda, right? So either he has tears welling up in his eyes and he rubs his eyes so that the tears fall and that Mother Yashoda can see that he's crying, right? It's kind of nuanced. Or he's incessantly crying. He always has tears in his eyes for love for his devotee, for fear of Mother Yashoda. And he's using his hands to wipe the tears away. Does everyone get that? So the meanings are very beautiful. Because if we look at this as Krishna's relationship with the pure devotee, and we can think about it as well, Krishna's relationship with us, even though we're not pure devotees, we have a relationship with Krishna. So either Krishna has tears in his eyes welling up because Krishna just wants us to turn to him. Krishna just wants us to love him. Krishna wants us to remember our eternal relationship with him. So either Krishna has tears in his eyes welling up and he rubs them so that tears fall from his eyes and we can see, oh my God, Krishna's crying. oh no, I have to go back to my relationship with Krishna. Krishna's crying. Or Krishna is always crying for his pure devotee. Krishna is always incessantly having tears, and he has to rub them away because they just keep on coming. And I just thought that was really beautiful, and that both meanings are really intricate and beautiful. And I'll end with this. This is bringing us to the understanding that Krishna is, because then as we go on with the Damodar pastime, Krishna gets bound to the mortar and etc. And so the understanding is that, in the last line of this Damodarastakam, it says Bhakti Badam, right? So Krishna is only bound by love. Krishna is only bound by bhakti. There's nothing else. So yogi, karmi, jnani, Vedantist, philosophy, whatever, it's not going to bind Krishna. It's not gonna reciprocate in the way that Krishna wants. And so really a beautiful understanding here is that Krishna doesn't care about our knowledge. He doesn't care about how much we quote unquote succeed or fail in this material life, karma, right? He doesn't care about our prowess and our yogi meditations and mystic powers and cities that we get. He doesn't care about any of that stuff, right? He doesn't care about the outward appearances, and he cares about really our heart becoming soft. There's a beautiful verse in Bhagavatam that I will butcher. I don't know the Sanskrit, but it says that the person who does not have tears welling from his eyes and whose hairs don't stand on end upon hearing about Krishna's pastimes, that heart must be stone clad. It must be clad in stone, right? And so Krishna doesn't want our heart to be stone clad. He wants our hearts to become like butter so that we can really relish the nectar of these pastimes and not just hear them as stories, or not just hear them as like, oh, whatever, that's cute, or also not be afraid of the stories. Oh, I can't read these stories, or I can't speak on these pastimes because I'm not qualified, or etc. And it's really interesting that Krishna is playing out fear, right? Krishna is playing out fear of Mother Yashoda. And I thought fear was a really interesting topic. This is a very beautiful verse that I like to repeat a lot of times. But before we say this verse and end in 1 minute, because I want to open it up for questions for 10 minutes, the essential problem, the root problem of our existence as conditioned jivas. Does anyone know what is our root problem as conditioned jivas? Ignorance, yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Imperfect senses.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to make you keep on guessing. Yeah, envy is there. Sure. Yeah. It's explained in the scriptures that it's very simple. We either are turned towards Krishna or we are turning away from Krishna. This is called Krishna Bahirmukha or Krishna Unmukha, right? We're either turning towards Krishna or we're turning away from Krishna. When we're turning towards Krishna, there's no fear in the heart. When we're turning away from Krishna, there is fear in the heart. It's that simple. So there's this very famous verse from Bhagavatam, Canto 11, chapter 2, verse 37, that says, Bhayam dvitiya binavesha tashyad isha dapetasya viparyayo smriti tanmaya yato buddha abhajetam bhaktya ekayesham gurudeva tatma. That the fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body. And because of absorption in the external illusory energy, the living entity turns away from Krishna, turns away from the Supreme Lord, and he forgets his own constitutional position as servant of the Lord. And so this bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. And so the prescription is, therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in unalloyed devotional service of the Lord. Vaidhi Bhakti, yes, Bhakti. Under the guidance of a spiritual master who he should accept as his worshipable deity and his very life, and soul. I have a bunch of other points about our motivations and blah, 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 but we don't have time. And so I'll just sum up the main 2 points that I made here. Sorry, I have a knee thing. The main 2 points that I made here are: 1, understanding our position. And you can read in the purport of verse 5 of Nectar of Instruction. Srila Prabhupada really breaks it down, definitions of Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyam Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. He really breaks it down, citing Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, where this is explained. So if you want to read about like where we are or our position, you can go there and you can read more about that. So yeah, point 1 is understanding our position, understanding that we're not pure devotees. However, understanding that these pure devotees are our role models and that we should be hearing about them and that we should be learning about them and hearing the pastimes, but not mistaking their relationship and their rasa and their bhav that they're having with Krishna as something that we can have right now, right? Because we are in the state of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, still developing our relationship with Krishna. And then the second point was just that sweet, nuanced point about the specifics of the Leela, that either Krishna is having tears well up in his eyes because his pure devotee, of his relationship, his longing for his relationship with his pure devotee. And so that we see his tears, he is rubbing them so that they fall from his eyes and we can see them. Or Krishna is just constantly crying for us in separation, because Krishna wants us to turn towards him. And so he's wiping his tears away. And that last verse, that fear arises in the heart when we turn away from Krishna, and therefore we should turn towards Krishna and develop our relationship with him further. Jai. That's all I have for today. So I will open it up for questions. And yes, Evan. I don't know. Oh, no?
We can't hear that. I hope you'll repeat or get them to talk into them. Okay.
He's coming here.
So the question that comes up for me is, we hear about all these different platforms of devotional service. There's, Shraddha to Prema, and then there's Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti, and within those even there is different platforms. And so to me, it seems like it's hard to self-diagnose because you have the wrong ideas of, oh, maybe you're expecting yourself to be more advanced than you are, or maybe you're thinking yourself to be maybe at a very beginner platform when you actually, and people are telling you that you're on this beginner platform, but maybe you're past that. And so who gets to, my question is, who gets to diagnose you? Like, are you in Bhajana Kriya, or are you in Anartha Nivritti, or are you in Nishta maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who gets to tell you that? Because they can't really tell you your internal status.
Mm-hmm.
It's very personal, but at the same time, you can misjudge yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. I would answer it in 2 ways. One is that the guru is supposed to tell you that, and that these are actually the questions that you should be asking your guru. Not, should I take this job? Or, what should I do with my, I don't know, like, I want a partner, I want a wife, I want a husband. Guru Dev, can you help me get one? Like this kind of stuff. And I think in contemporary society, it turns out that way, where we sometimes come to the guru with like, sometimes practical things and not actually like deep spiritual questions. Like, these are the questions that you should be asking the guru. Like, hey, I'm confused about my adhikar. Can you please tell me? And it's interesting because in Vedic times, and even past Vedic times, like in traditional Gurukul, right? Like, you're supposed to live with the guru is supposed to like really know you. And it's really interesting because a lot of people nowadays don't have that much of a personal relationship with the guru. I do believe that all of the answers are there in hearing from the guru, but I always recommend people to do whatever it takes to have a personal relationship with the guru. Like, do whatever it takes, so that's one. Two is one has to be informed. So I would suggest, if you haven't read already, reading the Madhurya Kandambini. This is a very, very beautiful book by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that really breaks down the stages, and not only the stages, but the roadblocks. Like, why aren't I advancing? And it's a really good book to help you diagnose, where am I and why aren't I advancing? And so those are my two suggestions. Is that okay?
One question you say about having a personal relationship with the guru. Some gurus have so many disciples. It's difficult to really have one. So
Yeah, so Prabhu is saying that how you have a personal relationship with your guru, some gurus have so many disciples. That's why I said do whatever it takes. I mean, obviously, sometimes it's mercy, and you can't, and karma, and you can't, like, why wasn't I born 50 years earlier, and why isn't Srila Prabhupada my guru? I don't know, because he's not, because my karma determined that I should be born now, and that I have another guru, right? So I think in one lens, it's mercy, like, and you can't, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't manufacture that, right? And the other is do whatever it takes. Yeah, I mean, don't stalk your guru, but do whatever it takes. I think I remember, I'll say one last thing here. I remember before I took first initiation, Arjuna Prabhu was counseling me a lot. And I remember at one point, it was like, when gurus, especially my guru, gives initiation, like, you never know if he's actually going to give it or not, or you never know, like, if he's actually going to come or not. Like, you're always in like this constant distress of just like, is he coming? Is he not coming? Is he going to give initiation? And I remember at one point, I was living here in the ashram, and at one point I got so, not necessarily dejected, but indifferent. And I was just like, I don't want to be a bother, I don't want to push. I don't want to, like, whatever. I don't want to, no, it's okay, whatever. Like, because Arjuna Prabhu was always asking me, do you remember this? We were in, and I remember one day he really knocked some sense into me, because I was really going into that indifferent space of like, no. It's fine. Like, whatever. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And Arjuna Prabhu spoke to me quite strongly, and he said, this is not the correct mood to have. You should be hankering for the mercy of your guru, and you should try to do anything possible to make this initiation happen. And you should go find him, and you should go talk to him, and you should go talk to his senior disciples, and you should make this happen, because that is the correct mood. The mood is not, oh no, I don't know, whatever, like this. So that's more what I'm saying. Not necessarily like, go stalk your guru, but the mood to have is that I should be hankering for my guru's mercy, and I should be hankering for a personal relationship for my guru. If that's not in the stars for me, then so be it. But that should be the mood, at least, if that makes sense. Okie dokie. I think it is time. So thank you so much. Haribol.
Great class, Kishor Chandra Prabhu. Thank you. Will we have darshan? No. Krishna. Right. All right. Good seeing you all. Hare Krishna. Andrea, Rich, Bhakti Devi, Bhakti Phone, Akiko Chan, Susan, Bhima Prabhu, Yogeshwari, Jamuna Jaya, Suzanne, Amish, Arjuna Prabhu. Yeah, he's live. I mean, he's in person and on Zoom at the same time. This is a devotee. Domi, Pink Yogi of Harlem, Cindy Lunsford, Krishna Daya Prabhu, Nachi, Anna, Danakeli Prabhu, Rameshwar Naik. Yes, thank you so much for Betty, Bhakti Devi, Hare Krishna. Good to see your bright face. Rameshwar Naik, yes. This is our darshan. Kishor Chandra cut us out, but we still get the darshan of a devotee, the darshan of a devotee. What can be better? All right, it's Monday. Don't forget Krishna. You may get tough, but don't forget Krishna. Chase Krishna. Akiko-chan, Hare Krishna. I can't hear you, Andrea.
We're going to stalk Krishna.
Stalk Krishna, yes. Unstuck your guru, stalk Krishna. Oh, Darshan is here. Akiko-chan, thank you.
Akiko-chan, we just needs to unblur it. Yay, hurry,
Yes. Thank you, Akiko-chan. We asked for it, Krishna granted the desire. Yes, this is Krishna consciousness. Cindy Lunsford, yeah, drive safely. Drive safely. Try. See, Krishna gives you devotees and devotees give you Krishna. Right. Krishna gave us Rameshwar Naik. Yes, how wonderful is Krishna. Okay, I have to tune out. I love you.